Welcome back. We're in number 4 of our mini-series within our greater series. Our greater series is the life of Jesus, and we're in our mini-series within it, which is Christ-like Conversations number 4. So, have y'all got the point so far that we've made that we are to have Christ-like conversations? Okay, we got that point. Now, the second point that we made, the idea of what are we to establish being the representative of Christ, being the representative of God, being the image of God, what are we to establish in the conversation, first and foremost? Safety. So everybody's got that idea. Okay, we spent a couple weeks on that, so make sure everybody got that. So let's look at these 3 big takeaways to start with. As a disciple of Jesus, what is your purpose in your conversations? Now, one of the things I want to do, I want y'all to talk a lot during this if you want to. We're probably not going to get through this whole thing today. We may only get about halfway through it. Just depending on how much discussion we have. Now, one thing, because we're going to talk about relationships, and it is being recorded, and we want to be able to play it on the internet, so if you talk about a relationship, probably don't mention somebody's name, and you probably don't want to even mention the exact relationship. You might say a member of my family, or say somebody I work with. You get what I'm saying? Now, I'm going to pick on my daughter here, because she's not going to go back and watch my sermon, and she can't be embarrassed by me being here. But so I may mention her, but that's all right. So I'm just telling you, be careful about that, because we are recording it. We do want to put it on the internet, so be careful about when you talk about a specific relationship. All right, so as a disciple of Jesus, what is your purpose in your conversations? Knowing what you know about discipleship, knowing the principles of discipleship, what's your purpose in having conversations? What are you saying, Jeff? It's all right if you're wrong.
To reflect the image of God.
Okay, yeah, there, to reflect the image of God. One, you, as a representative of God, as someone made in the image of God, as a disciple of Jesus, imitating Jesus, in your conversations, your purpose is to reflect the image of God. To say what God would say if He was having your conversations. Dallas Willard said, a disciple of Jesus is simply somebody that does what Jesus would do if He was living their life.
Amen.
Does that make sense? So in your conversations, where you ultimately want to get to, and where we will get to when we get to paradise, but what you want to progressively work towards, is saying in your conversations what God would say if He was living your life. Because, go ahead, sorry.
And in the same spirit too. It's not just the words, it's the
Right, and how you say it. It's not just what He would say, how He would say it. Right? And that's why it's His words, His ways. What He would say, how He would say it. Now, that's your end of the conversation. The other end of the conversation, what's your purpose? As far as this person is concerned. Go ahead.
Safety, make them feel comfortable.
Okay, make them feel comfortable. What's the end goal purpose? Okay, to bring glory to God, that's the big giant ending. Back that a step up.
Make a disciple.
Make a disciple, kind of in between those two things.
Mutual respect.
That's kind of back this way. So in between bringing glory to God and them being a disciple, how do they bring glory to God by being a disciple?
Well, we used to affect change in their lives.
Right, to change them
to the image, to see them transformed.
Okay, yeah, there you go. To see them transformed into the image of God they were created to be.
Even if they don't realize it at the present.
Right. Yes, and now, does that make sense? In other words, and we said it this way, to rescue and redeem the image of God within them.
Yes.
Why? Because that's how God has brought glory. Does that make sense? Is one, you're bringing glory on your end by being the image of God, but then you want them to bring glory to God by being the image of God that they were created to be. And the way that's going to come about is through your conversations with them. It's not just going to happen magically. They're going to have conversations with somebody. You're the person they're going to have a conversation with. Does that make sense? There's people you're going to have a conversation with, I'm never going to have a conversation with. Right? I'm going to have a conversation with you to help rescue and redeem the image of God within you, and then you're going to go out and have conversations with people to rescue and redeem. Does that make sense? Okay. Then, if you get the image of God rescued and redeemed within them, what are they going to go do?
Pay it forward.
They're going to go have a conversation. Does that?
It's a pyramid scheme.
It's a pyramid scheme, right? Except for that, this is the only legitimate pyramid scheme there is, right? This is the only one. Okay, now, to think about that, so we have this ultimate big purpose, right, of bringing glory to God through people being rescued and redeemed into the image of God that they are originally created to be, by imitating Jesus as his disciple, by knowing his words and ways and actually doing them, right, within a relational discipleship. What was that? Those 4 principles. See how easy it was? All right. Okay, so you get that, right? Now, when you go into these conversations, are you going to sit down with somebody you're at odds with and say, I'm here to rescue and redeem the image of God within you?
Nope.
Right. No, it doesn't work that way, right? So, with that, we understand that that's our bigger, greater, larger purpose. But there's going to be sub-purposes within that. Okay? So like, I'm going to pick on my daughter, because really this is one of the big emphasis that in this is that God gave me children who are very easily exasperated, and that I have to really put a lot of effort into my conversations with them. And I'm just really now learning how to do this, right? And this is one of the big ones that probably my relationship with my daughter is probably the hardest, the person I have the hardest time having a conversation with, right? And that's where I'm having to practice this. Now, ultimately, I want her to be the image of God that she was created to be. That's my big purpose. But my sub-purpose is, I just want me and her to be able to have a conversation.
Calm conversation.
Right, so you see how I have this sub-purpose?
To get there.
Right, I have this sub-purpose of, I just want to be able to have a conversation without me yelling or without her yelling.
Right, amen. That's right.
Right? Because now, and this hits me hard, so if it hits you hard, it's all right. Other than something needs to happen immediately.
Right.
And other than something needs to happen immediately right now, there's no reason to yell at anybody in a Christ-like conversation.
That's right. That's right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Unless something needs to happen immediately, and you have to yell to immediately get somebody's attention to make something immediately happen. If you're yelling, you're not having a Christ-like conversation. And I'm talking to me before y'all, because I am the loud mouth, let you know about it, okay? Right, okay, so this is not me throwing rocks at y'all, this is telling me. The other side of that is, if you're withholding all information from the conversation, you're not having a Christ-like conversation either. Right?
That's right.
Okay, so we get this, we have this big ultimate purpose. Everybody got that. So as a disciple of Jesus, everybody knows what your big main purpose in the conversation is, right? Bring glory to God through you and others, people being reconformed to the image of God they were originally created to be by imitating Jesus as his disciple, right? But then also recognizing that you're going to have smaller sub-purposes within that larger purpose. And usually when you're having these conversations with people, you're going to focus on that purpose. You're not, when you get to the level that we're at with each other, we know the conversations that we're having with each other is about restoring the image of God, but that's not really something you need to hit somebody over the head with when you're just trying to, hey, can we get along here? Can we work together? Can we live together? Can we, whatever we have to do together, can we figure out how to do that and have a conversation about that? Right? Okay, what's some other conversation purposes you think you might have? So for me, like you might be with a child, be able to have a conversation. What's some other ones? Again, this is a lot of crowd participation in this one, and we're going to try and keep this short because basically we're going to stick on this till we get it done. So if we only get a third of this way through, we'll come back next week and believe it. I'm sorry, go ahead. Professional. So you got to work with people, right?
Right.
Right. Now, ultimately, you'd like to see that coworker come to follow Jesus as a disciple, but right now, you might just it might just be being able to work together, right, in a reasonable way.
And depending on where you work, you have to be very selective and cautious about how you share.
Yeah, ain't no point in getting fired,
No.
right? So work. What's some other ones?
Family.
Family, yeah, family. Not just child relationship. It might be with a parent. You know, and it might not be just about having a conversation. What's some other family ones? Let's throw some family ones out there.
Brothers and sisters.
Well, not just the relationship, the conversation, the purpose. What's the purpose in like a family?
You get through Thanksgiving.
To get through Thanksgiving, yeah.
Find common ground, just be able to get along.
Find some common ground, yeah. Get along, yeah. What are some other ones? What about when somebody's health is? Can that be a hard conversation?
And you got to get them there quick.
Right? You got to get them there quick, or you got to get them there, period. You know? Sometimes you might have to have a conversation with somebody about their health, a hard conversation.
Right. And they're doing and eating or drinking or in a habit that is bringing them down, and
Right.
they're complicating their own situation, and they don't really want to hear it. But
Right.
if you withhold and you're silent, you're guilty, so there has to be some kind of,
Right. Right. Okay, so health, physical health, that might be a family one. What about mental health conversations in a family?
that's even harder.
Yeah, but is these not conversations in a family situation where you're going to have to be Christ-like to be able to have this conversation?
Sometimes you can't go directly to that person either. You gotta talk to their peripheral people and get together as a group.
Sometimes, again, you got to talk to family members about being able to talk to a family member.
Right.
So you see, now what it is again, you understand this greater, larger purpose,
Right.
but then you've got to understand these sub-purposes. So my point is, when you go into a conversation, know what your purpose is. Right? Have a well-defined before you. Now sometimes, so here's
Well,
ladies.
sometimes you gotta find a lot of common ground before you can even get to the point of.
Right. And sometimes you got to have conversations.
Build the relationship.
Right, you have to have conversations, even smaller purposes, to get to the big purpose. So my point being is, sometimes you're going to be able to plan these conversations out. If you have time to plan them out, we're actually going to give you the tools. I'm actually working on a workbook for you. If you know that you've got a conversation coming up, it's based off the notes for these sermons. If you know you've got a conversation coming up, sit down and go through the workbook and plan out the conversation. That's the level I want to help you do this. Right?
But when you mention establishing safety, a lot of times that means just making it clear that your motives are pure and you're
Right.
not just being nosy or you're not.
Right.
You gotta earn
Yeah,
the-
we're getting there. Yeah, we're getting there. That's actually here in just a little bit. You see, there's a lot to this. But again, first we need to establish why we're doing this. Because if you don't have in your mind, this is to the glory of God, this is an awful lot of work, ain't it?
Yeah.
And you'll be like, man, this is too much work. Why am I doing this again? Understand that ultimate larger purpose behind it of being the image of God you were created to be, and ultimately working towards them becoming the image of God that they were created to be. But that's not going to be your first conversation with them, unless you have an extremely good relationship with them.
But once you're a fully realized adult disciple of Christ, it's natural.
Right, right, and
Yes.
yes, and you can work. See, this is a huge step in our maturity. This is a huge step in our work towards being able to have these conversations. When you can just off the cuff have these conversations, that's a pretty good indication that you're getting towards maturity. Does that make sense? And I think we're all, because again, I ain't sitting up here telling y'all, I'm sitting here telling y'all I got a problem with this. That God gave me a child that specifically pointed out my problem with this. You know, that I'm working on and I'm learning how to do this too. Right? Okay. So we understand, understand your bigger, larger purpose. Then before you even have the conversation, if you have the ability and the time, establish what your purpose is. Sometimes if you get thrown into the conversation, try to slow it down, and before you speak, stop, and that's what we're going to talk about, stop and think, what is my purpose? Even if you have to say, before you go any further, let me stop and think for a second. If you have to do that, do that. But know what your purpose is. So number 2, as a disciple and imitator of Jesus, it is your job to establish or reestablish safety in the conversation in order to accomplish your purposes.
That's right.
Okay, so here's the thing, one of the things we're going to talk about. If someone feels safe in the conversation, they will talk to you about anything and they will listen to you talk about anything if they feel safe. If they don't want to listen to you and they don't want to talk to you, or they just want to yell at you, it's because they don't feel safe. And we've spent, you go back and look at the last 3 sermons. We spent a lot of time on this. Talking about why did Adam and Eve hide? Because they didn't feel safe anymore. Right? why did Herod even do what he did?
Threatened.
Because he was threatened. He had fear. He didn't feel safe. His position wasn't safe. So anybody, no matter the person, now one of the things, this is important to establish too, we're not talking right now about the Herods and the Pharisees, the people that aren't going to listen. They exist. We established that last week. They exist. They're there. We're not talking about them. We're talking about the people that are actually going to talk to us.
Right.
Okay? Later on, we're going to talk about the Herods and Pharisees. What's to do about them? But right now, we're talking about people who will actually talk to us. In other words, don't make the excuse, well, there's a Herod or Pharisee. Well,
Yeah.
not everybody is. If you're calling everybody that and you don't want to have a conversation with anybody, not everybody is, okay?
It's a cop out.
And it's not
Yeah.
them, it's you.
Yeah, then the problem's you, not them, okay? Okay, so that's important. So don't think, well, what about the person who don't? Okay, yeah, they exist. We're not talking about them right now. Okay? So, it's your job, if the person is actually willing to talk, your job to establish safety. It is not their job to establish your safety. You, like Christ, sacrifice your safety to enter into this conversation. We talked about this last week. Jesus sacrificed his safety to come into the world and rescue and redeem us. You sacrifice your safety to have this conversation to rescue and redeem.
Right, there's some risk, like the woman at the well. They even said, well, is he talking to this
Right.
woman? She's a Samaritan, it's a woman, you're by yourself.
Right.
Besides, the people in the area knew of her reputation.
Right.
So there is some risk, it's a calculated risk.
Right. You should feel unsafe at times during the conversation. Now, not physically unsafe,
Right.
but emotionally and all that, you should at times feel unsafe in the conversation. You're sacrificing your safety to get to have the conversation.
Yeah, under the guidance of the Holy Spirit.
Right.
And so he'll give peace.
Right.
And some people can only handle so much at this stage.
Right. All right. So now, next point, as a disciple and imitator of Jesus, this is how you're going to have safety. It is your job to establish a mutual purpose and mutual respect in your Christ-like conversations. So now we're getting into the nitty-gritty. How do I figure out my purpose, right? First job in this is going to be, you're going to establish a mutual purpose and you're going to establish mutual respect in the conversation. In other words, my first goal in this conversation is not to make my point. My first goal is to establish safety by establishing a mutual purpose and mutual respect. Now, is this contrary to usually how we have conversations?
Oh, yeah.
What is when we go into a conversation?
Prove your point,
Prove your point.
win.
Right. So here's where we're at in the teachings of Jesus. Stand firm then, or actually in the armor of God. Stand firm then with your feet fitted with the readiness that comes from the gospel of peace. Right? Having peaceful, Christ-like conversations with people in order to share the gospel.
And we're blessed because we're a peacemaker. We're attempting to be a peacemaker in a situation at the job or in the family or wherever that's strained.
Well, let's go to the next verse, since you already jumped the gun. Blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy. Okay, so what is it going to take for you to have this conversation? What do you have to show this person?
A lot of grace.
Yeah, mercy and grace. Will we say it's the same amount of mercy and grace you've been shown?
At least.
Yeah, it's probably less. You've been shown more. Right? In other words, why should I show mercy and grace to this person in this conversation? Well, because Jesus showed mercy and grace to you in his conversation with you. Right? Blessed are the merciful, for they shall be shown mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. So, what we talked about motives, right? There we said motives, right? When you go into this is why you establish your purpose. What is my motive? Do I have a pure at heart motive? Am I just going into this conversation to get to blast this person? If that's my only purpose, don't have a conversation. If I'm going into this conversation just to win, don't have a conversation. Right? My motive and my pure at heart has got to be what? To rescue and redeem the image of God within this person And then probably then we go back to the sub-motive of just getting to have a normal relationship with them, just getting over this hump in the road, figuring this situation in our life out. That's my purpose. If it's just to blast them, don't have a conversation. All right? Okay. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. And what that children of God means, basically, is you act like your Father. This is the imitator of God. If we are imitating God, thus being the image of God we were created to be, we will be peacemakers. Right? Which means we need to have peaceful, Christ-like conversations with people. That have as the goal for there to be peace between us and them, so that there might ultimately be peace between them and God. You're making peace between you and them with the intent of making peace between them and God. You see that? Okay. All right, so what is our purpose for having Christ-like conversations? So here's questions to ask yourself during your conversation to see if you're being Christ-like. And this is adapted from this book, Crucial Conversations, right? Where worldly people figured this out better than the church did. Yeah. All right, so questions you need to ask yourself. So everybody, you're going into what you know is going to be a hard conversation. Either you're knowing you're going into it, or all of a sudden it's sprung on you. Before you speak, or you speak and ask time to think, here's a question to ask yourself. What do I really want to accomplish? Now we know the bigger, greater purpose of reconforming to the image of God, but immediately there's a sub-purpose of, so, I'm picking on my daughter. Me and my daughter, right? I'm at my wit's end. She's at her wit's end. What do I want to accomplish? Do I just want to shut her up? No, I don't. Why? Because that's going to come back and bite me later in life. Right? That's exasperating her, which I'm commanded by the Bible, which means I'm commanded by God not to do.
That's right.
I'm commanded not to exasperate her.
So it's on you.
So I can shut her up, but it's going to exasperate her. So I have this purpose then of how do me and her get to the point where we can have constructive, calm conversations. That's my purpose. So for me, I want to not yell at her. I want to not exasperate her. But I want to be able to talk to her and convey information to her and help her out. Right? That's me. That's what I want, right? So what do I want for others? What do I want for her? I want her to learn how to control herself. I want her to learn how to be able to be a constructive adult.
Right.
To be able to function in the world, which she's going to struggle with because of her diagnosis. Right? But I want her to overcome that and not just function in the world. I want her to flourish in the world. And I want her to be a disciple of Jesus who makes other disciples of Jesus in the world. Right? And me yelling at her and exasperating her is not going to accomplish that purpose.
Right.
Right? It'll accomplish my immediate purpose of getting her to shut up. Maybe. Half the time it don't do that. Okay, for the relationship, what do I want this to be a constantly contentious relationship? No. I want this to be a good relationship. What do I want from this relationship? You see? So I'm deciding, what do I want from me? What do I want for her? And what do I want in the relationship between us? And then I added this question in that they don't have to go. What do I want for the glory of God and His kingdom? I want both me and her to bring glory to God by being reconformed to the image of God we're created to be. Right? So think about that. Think about your purposes going into these conversations. Now here's the big question to ask. Step outside of yourself, right? Like you're a camera looking at yourself having this conversation. And ask this question. After you've established that, after you've established what do I want for me, what do I want for the other person, what do I want for the relationship between us, and how do I want this to glorify God and His kingdom, ask this question. By what I am saying and how I am saying it, does it seem like I'm trying to accomplish these purposes? Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So when I step back and I see myself screaming at her, Does it look like I'm trying to accomplish these purposes? That's simple, isn't it? But let's stop and do that. Think about some conversations you had where you went way outside of Christ's likeness.
And it's far more than just yelling or screaming. It's
Right. Now there's the other side of that. That's the I go to. The other side is when you're yelling and screaming, you're trying to push your information into the shared pool of information. The other thing is to withhold information. We're going to talk more about this later. To withhold information from the shared pool of information. The two bad things to do is either try to force information or to withhold information. If you're over here going, yeah, whatever you say, man, yeah, let's just do that. That's a great idea. No, really, fine. I don't have anything to say. Does it sound like you don't have anything to say?
Yeah.
Right?
You just copped out.
Right. Copping out is just as bad as screaming out. One's not worse or better than the other. One may look worse,
Right.
but in reality, they're both as destructive to the conversation. So if you stepped back and looked at yourself having this conversation or having these conversations, does it look like you're trying to accomplish the purposes that you said you want to accomplish?
I don't know.
No, I mean if you're either one of those points, you're not. It doesn't. So what happened? You went into this conversation having these purposes in your mind, and what happened? They, in some way or shape or form, threatened you. They threatened you by either silence or violence. And when you felt threatened, what did you do? You did the exact same thing they did. And this is what we're saying you don't get to do. Right? You went in, they threatened the safety of the conversation, so you threatened the safety of the conversation.
Right. You want to take the high ground and then not stoop to the low ground just because they went low.
Right. So what you want to reckon, okay, so what does it feel like when that happens? So you went in with the best intentions.
Right.
It went very awry very quickly. What physically happened?
It depends on the person.
Depends on the person, right? But what are some? There's different feelings. There's no right answer here. What are some things you feel when this happens?
Anger, anxiety.
Anger, anxiety,
Confusion.
confusion. What else? Blood pressure. Everybody ever felt their blood pressure go up?
Some people want to cry.
Some people cry. What's some other thing? Anybody ever felt the blood drop from your face? There's been both the experience of being flushed, then there's also the experience of it dropping, and you can actually feel your face get cold.
Mine always blushes.
Okay, nausea. Nausea is one.
Sometimes I just want to bite somebody.
Sometimes physically wanting to physically grab a hold of them. What about just wanting to walk away from it and get out of there?
Which isn't necessarily the worst thing. It's a time.
Right? Yeah. If it's between hitting them and walking away, do walk
Yeah,
away.
walk away.
Let's give that disclaimer.
Yeah.
If it-
Come on.
Sorry.
Okay, now here we talked
Except
about
if you
this
have a
before.
sword, Peter.
Now we talked about this. The writers of the book attribute it to evolution. I don't. I attribute it to we were created for perfection. We were not created for conflict.
That's right.
When placed in conflict, our body short circuits.
So does our mind.
And our mind, which is part of our body.
Right.
The whole thing, the circuitry goes haywire. Because we're in a situation we were not created for, so our body finds something else.
To go to.
Right,
Compensatory
Right.
mechanism.
right.
But that very thing should set off the beeper. It's
Okay.
saying, just pause,
Right.
redirect, ask the person, what have I said to, and try to
Right.
reestablish safety. So
That-
that's actually a good thing if we catch it, but we
Right.
have to be the one.
Right, so that's the big thing. Catch that? That's the big thing. No longer take those as an opportunity to return the threat.
Right.
Take them as a signal that you need to do what?
Apologize and reestablish it.
Possibly not apologize. We're going to get to that one. Possibly, maybe, maybe not. But it's going to be reestablish safety. Whenever you don't feel safe and you can tell in your physiology that you don't feel safe, realize the other person feels the same way. And you, as the person who is imitating Christ, now makes a decision to sacrifice your safety, right? You don't feel safe, they don't feel safe. If this conversation is going to proceed and actually be constructive, somebody has to sacrifice their safety. And now again, we're not talking about physically safe. You're not going to get hit. If it's going to hit you in the head or kill you or something, leave, right? Call the police. We're talking about just emotional physiology, right? You're going to sacrifice your feeling of safety by not threatening back.
And that's where you pause, you redirect, and you contrast. You say, listen, I didn't say what I just said to make you upset. I do want you to understand also why I'm concerned about your...
We're getting there.
Yes.
We're getting there.
Oh, good.
We're getting there. Yeah, stands right ahead. It's all right. We're getting there. Okay, so now let's ask this question. So we've stepped back and we've looked at ourselves having the conversation, right? We've seen ourselves threaten the safety of the conversation because we acted upon our physiology rather than taking that physiology as a sign that we need to step back and say. So if I'm not trying to accomplish my religious purposes, what does it look like I'm trying to accomplish? Okay, here's our three choices. Winning.
Amen.
Right? I'm a good one at that one. I like to win arguments. Punishing. Not only am I going to win this conversation, I'm going to punish you for not listening to me to begin with.
Make them feel bad.
Right. You're going to feel worse than I do. Or just keeping the peace. Okay, it's all right. No, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. It's all right. Okay, I'll take it back. Right? If you stepped back and looked at yourself in these conversations, does it look like you're trying to actually accomplish your purpose, or does it look like that a switch has been flipped and now you've switched from your purpose that you originally had to now one of these three other purposes of winning the argument, punishing the other other person, or just trying to keep the peace? Right? Really, this is what you got to do. This is again, how do you do this? This is how you do this. When you realize, this is one of those conversations. If I could see myself from the outside, what does it look like I'm doing? Right? Because I can tell you, what it looks like you're doing is what you're doing.
And that's how it's being perceived by the other people and others around.
Right. You have forgotten your original purpose. So here's the thing. Slow down, stop, and then ask this question. When you're in this, right, and you feel, now you've got a choice to make. You had your original purpose, and now you have one of these other purposes to win, punish, or just keep the peace. Ask yourself this question. What do I really not want? Because you ask yourself a question, what did I really want? What do you really not want?
You don't want conflict. You don't really want them to be itch.
Now, afterwards, let's say you went to winning, punishing, or afterwards, did you really want that?
Not if you are a good intentioned disciple, no.
Right. Right. And then you can start questioning, if you're I like punishing people in my conversations.
Well, I wonder if I'm saved.
We need to talk about whether you're a disciple of Jesus or not.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay, so then you felt yourself going there, you may have started going there. Stop and ask this question. What do I really need to do in order to accomplish what I really want to accomplish and avoid what I don't want to do? I got these purposes I want to accomplish. I don't want to win, punish, or withdraw and just keep the peace. Okay, so what do we need to do? And that's what we're going to talk about. This is what we're talking about. This is what we're going to talk about step by step. And again, I'm going to print out a workbook for you so that you go, I can't remember all that stuff he said. But you got a conversation come up, you can write down. What do I want to accomplish? This is what I want to accomplish. What do I not want to accomplish? This is what I don't want to accomplish. What am I going to do? Here's what I'm going to do. Right? Now here's the thing, because if you practice this on the ones that you know you have coming, what happens when you practice something?
Oh, you get used to it. Yeah, like Todd said, it becomes your,
Right.
normal.
Yeah, how did you get to where you react in conversations like this now?
It's-
Practice.
But that's how you saw it in your family when you know, that's.
Right. That's
Yeah.
what you learned. That's what you practiced.
Right.
So we're going to relearn and re-practice. Right? Alright. So let me get this one verse in, because we actually need to have a verse here, and then they'll probably go ahead and close up. And go ahead and take these notes home and be reading ahead if you want to, guys. Take these notes home and read ahead, okay? As a disciple of Jesus, okay, here's what your question that you're asking yourself. Are we establishing, maintaining, and reestablishing safety in the conversation? It's not just, okay, man, I made this safe, he didn't want to be safe, now I'm going to not safe. No. No. Okay, so here's Jesus. This is Jesus from the Sermon on the Mount. Therefore, if you were offering a gift at the altar, and there remember that your brother or sister has something against you, leave your gift there in front of the altar. First go and be reconciled to them, then come and offer your gift. Settle matters quickly with your adversary who is taking you to court. Do it while you are still together on the way, or your adversary may hand you over to the judge, and the judge may hand you over to the officer, and you may be thrown into prison. Truly I tell you, you will not get out until you have paid the last penny. In both of those situations, who is the responsibility on to try to reconcile and try to establish safety?
The disciple.
The disciple of Jesus. Right? Alright, so we're going to go ahead and stop. Okay, because there's no reason to push them all the way through this, because we're not going to get all the way through this, and we're going to be on this for how many ever weeks this takes to get this. Is everybody kind of getting the gist, the introduction, what's going on? Is everybody interested in learning this? I would really hope so. Okay, good, because I'll tell you what, I need this. I mean, don't feel bad if you're sitting there, man, I feel like you beat me up. No, dude, I need this as bad as you do. Right? Which here's the thing, I'm excited about this. Okay, I'm excited about this because I'm looking forward to actually having these good, constructive conversations with people.
Amen.
And getting myself under control and teaching other people to be under control, you know what I'm saying, and I've already had some of these. I've already started using this, and it works. It really does. And the better job you do of it, the better results you get. It does work, okay? And I've had to several times peel myself back. Like I snapped, and I said, yeah, don't snap. Go back. Stop what you're doing. It's not what you're supposed to be doing. Back up. You know what I mean? So it's going to be a learning process.